All right, we're back. Hey, everybody. So welcome to the next session. I'm here with Keith Groover. Keith Groover is the inventor of the Glide, which is an instrument that I have been fascinated by since a while. And I have one here myself. That's number 2 in Germany, I think. So I'm one of the first, and it's I don't know how much I should tell about it, but so it was the winning instrument at the 2019 Guthman competition, which is happening in where again?
It's in Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta, Georgia, exactly, and which is it's pretty prestigious. So I'm always checking out who's even the third, fourth winner, because it's always amazing instruments that are competing for the best prize. And with that, maybe just tell us about it, Keith.
All right, cool.
Hide myself from the stage.
All right, I'm going to take off my headphones so I can move around a little bit more. My name is Keith Groover, and I'm from Spartanburg, South Carolina in America. And I've designed this little musical instrument called the Glide. Let me tell you just a little bit of my background. I'm a guitarist and a musician, and I've been a multi-instrumentalist since I was a little kid. I think guitar was the third or fourth instrument I played, and ended up being a guitar teacher. And so I've done a lot of guitar teaching, a lot of education, and I've also just always been kind of a tinkerer with inventions, a couple different guitar inventions. But I always wanted to make an instrument from scratch, like from beginning to end, and just see what would happen. So I kind of messed around with a few acoustic instruments, and then I guess it was about 3 or 4 years ago, I discovered a little demo online that showed like a drum that was based on an accelerometer, and this was not anything it wasn't done well. It didn't end up being anything commercial, but it was interesting. And so I thought, well, what if you had a drum that was melodic instead of just being a percussion sound? And so I kind of started messing around, and I ended up with I had like a one-handed version of this instrument where you would kind of like you would hold a chord on a keyboard and then make a hit like that. But ended up kind of messing around and coming up with a two-handed version. And so let me just show you real quick how this works. I'm just gonna do nothing fancy. All right, so. Like that. So what this is, let me kind of do a little walkthrough. Let's see, let me talk about how it works. All right, so this hand over here, my left hand, but it's actually symmetrical, so you can do it in either hand. My left hand chooses the 12 notes of the scale. So the 3 buttons on the front that you see here, those choose the 7 notes of a major scale, like the white keys on a piano. So C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then back to C. And then I've got a little thumbstick on the top, so you can see that. And the thumbstick will choose sharps and flats. So if I hold down this note, for instance, what I can do is I can play it like this. I do a hit, and I can do vibrato like that. And then I can turn that off. I can do volume like that. If I want to make it sharp, I just do that. Then flat. Something like that. And then over here in this hand, I've got 4 different combinations where I've got 4 different octaves. So I've got the lowest octave, and the next one, and the highest one, like that. And then as you see, I can do vibrato, and the vibrato is directly linked to this accelerometer. So I can do something that's very slow, or I can do it something that's kind of like goat vibrato, like rock and roll, Angus Young sort of thing. And then I can do, very shallow, more kind of operatic, very deep and fast. And then I can also use it to do sort of little micro adjustments in pitch. So I can whenever I've done some harmony stuff, whenever I've done duets, that sort of thing, I can actually use that to really fine tune various notes to really lock in harmonically. So anyway, like I was saying, that's kind of the basics of how to play a note. Now the big thing is glide. And so the way this works is I've got two different positions. I've got 45 degrees forward and 45 degrees backwards. And so I play a note, and then I switch to another note, and I go to that note. I switch to another note, switch to another note. So, okay. Oh, 1 second. All right, so fix something here. There we go. So that is glide, and I can go from any note on the instrument to any other note. So I can play from a really low note like this to a really high note. See, I've switched it over here to the highest octave. Yeah, everywhere. And people tend to compare this to a theremin, but that's really the only thing that sounds like a theremin is whenever you do something like that, which sounds terrible. I do occasionally will use it to. You can do that kind of stuff. Oh, there's one other. Well, there's a couple other features, but there's one other I wanted to show you, which is you can change the tone. So over here, I've got it set up so that whenever I play a note, and I can actually, a lot of times what I'll do is something like, I'll turn this upside down and then so you get this kind of Chewbacca the Wookiee kind of effect going on. But I use that a lot of times to find a good tone for whatever part I'm playing, whatever piece I'm playing. I think in the future, people will probably use that to actually change the tone while they're playing. I most of the time will just find a nice tone that I like and then set it from that. Oops. Let me do. Okay. And then also I can do legato. So whenever I start in the back position, I can switch. Like that. So I designed this. My thoughts about instrument design is that, one, we haven't had a lot of brand new instruments that are just completely different from traditional acoustic instruments. We haven't had a lot of those really succeed. And I think my approach has been, I wanted to have something that was accessible to everyone. And I wanted to be physically accessible, but also musically accessible and also financially accessible. And I think a lot of times instruments that come out, they don't fulfill one of those criteria. Like they might be a really, great instrument, but they cost, $10,000 or $5,000, something like that. And if you're going to have a new instrument be adopted, I feel like it needs to be available to a very large swath of people so that a kid can just try it out, that he can buy it, try it out, and then just start getting obsessed with it. So new instruments are kind of at a disadvantage in this way because, like there have been 10 million guitars made. And so production prices have gone way down. So you can get a pretty good guitar for $150, $200 for a beginner. But if you wanted to get a brand new electronic instrument that is brand new on the scene, a lot of times it ends up being more expensive. So one of my guiding principles with this was to try to keep it as simple and as cheap as possible. I messed around with, including like a gyro, or including, kind of fancy buttons that do a bunch of different colors, or adding some more buttons. Like there were many, many times while designing it where I was like, if I just had a fourth button here, it would make everything simpler. But the more complicated it gets, the less accessible it gets. So I stuck with this form factor mostly because I wanted to keep down price. I wanted to keep down complexity in order to make it as accessible as it could be. All right. Let's see. I think that's probably about it. I could go into more details about like the MIDI stuff and the design process and the programming aspect, but I think I'd rather just take some questions. So thank you guys very much.
Right. Thanks so much for the talk. It was really interesting.
Cool.
And yeah, man, thanks. I really enjoy mine, by the way. And you're way ahead of me with I had to practice like 10,000 hours, which is good, right? Like that's what you want. You want an instrument that is easy to start with, but then really hard to master, because I have some work to do with it.
Yeah, and I definitely have not hit 10,000 hours. I feel like I'm at about maybe 15%. Like I still have to think about it a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I know that, I didn't start playing this until I was, definitely a grown adult, because it didn't exist until a few years ago. And I feel like kids who have started below the age of 12 or so, when their brains are still plastic, they can get it to a point where it's just absolutely second nature. And for me, it's not really second nature. It's like 1.5 nature, so I don't have to think about it a lot, but I do still have to think about it definitely whenever I'm playing.
Right. Cool. Let's see if we have any questions, any raised hands. Not yet. Anybody? Other than that, maybe I have a question. Let's see. So
I have a question, but I don't have a raise your hand thing at the bottom of my screen because I'm a co-host. Do you sell this instrument?
Yes, I do. Yeah, if you go to I shipped out the first one this past June, and I've basically the instrument is the instrument is 3D printed. The case is 3D printed, and then it's got a couple of circuit boards that are inside it that I worked with the designer out in California. If you know the instrument, the Linstrument, the Roger Lenz touch instrument, whenever I won the Guthman competition, Roger Lynn was one of the judges, and so I got to meet him, and he's kind of a hero of mine, which was super cool. But I talked to him about that next level, about circuit board design. And so he said, well, there's a guy named Darius Mostaufi who he designed the Linstrument. He designed the circuit board, and he was like, I'd love to get you in touch with him. So I was able to talk to him, and he and I have been collaborating on the hardware aspect ever since. So yeah, I shipped out the first one this past June. They are 3D printed, but I also, I'm hand assembling all of them. I'm considering this kind of my sort of beta phase, working out some of the kinks to the design and the physical kinks and some of the code kinks. And now pretty much have all those all worked out, and we're kind of gearing up to start the ramp up for the next phase.
Great. I have a second question. Do you use it yourself when you do live performances, or do you play live performances at all? Because you're a multi-instrumental musician, so I guess that you play concerts. Do you use it in your concerts?
Yeah, I have. It's kind of interesting with Robin. I play in a duet that is guitar and cello, and I do some guitar percussion thing. And I had probably 100 people forward me at least one video of Robin playing on his instrument over the last 5 years, because I do a little bit of that. So this doesn't necessarily fit into that circumstance, but I have used it in other circumstances. And of course, the last year with COVID and everything, there have been very little live performances of anything. But I have used it. I have used it several times, and it's always been fun.
Cool, awesome. Thank you. It's amazing.
Cool.
Let's see if you have any more questions. So far, no. I would have maybe another one.
Sure.
So in musical instrument design, often there are multiple like paths you can take. You can, for example, take a guitar and augment it like Robin did with more interface and more things to do with it. And there's like, it's kind of like a fluid kind of border between that and then an instrument that nobody has ever seen and has never has no real connection to anything. Like if you see it, you don't know how to play it initially because you're not familiar with any of its interface. So, and I would actually classify like the Glide as kind of like that, but it does have one association, which is like the three buttons, which is like a trumpet, right? And I mean, we talked about this before once, but do you like, what's your take on that? Like to go totally, you want to make it better and have something completely new versus people have an existing expectation and also gestural repertoire which fits to instruments that might give them some information of how to play it from the start.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Like people always compare it to the trumpet, and I'm always like, well, it has 5 buttons, not 3 buttons, because it has the octave buttons over here, and it also has the thumbstick. But yeah, I hear a lot of people say it's like, oh, it's like a theremin trumpet, and whatever. I found that people need to compare a new thing to a thing that already exists in order to kind of to compartmentalize it a little bit. I actually think of this instrument more as like a guitar, honestly, because whenever I was teaching, I had a lot of students that ended up having to quit eventually because of just physical problems. They just got tired while playing, or they ended up having problems with their wrist. Like these weren't necessarily my students, but because I would always straighten out the wrist. But if you think about the guitar, you have to crank your left hand really far underneath. You have to drop your shoulder a good bit, and then with your right arm, you have to come. Your right shoulder has to kind of come over the body of the guitar. And I had this thought. I was like, man, wouldn't it be great if the guitar, if you could just like straighten out the left hand, and then instead of the right hand being like this, you could straighten it out and have it be like this. And then whenever you played a note, you held a chord or something in your left hand, and then you just struck it like that. So for me, the Glide is kind of like taking a guitar and then using the world of electronics in order to make it something that is very human-centered, rather than the guitar, which is very, very like physics-centered. Like the reason that a guitar is not very ergonomic is because a string has to be straight and a string has to be under tension. And so you kind of just end up with a compromise with your left hand and your right hand. And each hand is kind of comfortable. Whereas this way, each hand can be as comfortable as you want it to be. So the analogy I use is if you think about the way that like a drill, 150 years ago, one of those manual drills that you did this kind of thing, that was using the technology of the time. But whenever you had electricity and you had batteries, and you could make an electric drill where you just zzz, zzz, it was a complete redesign in order to accomplish the same goal. So I don't think of it as completely divorced from kind of traditional music. It's more like a musical instrument taking advantage of modern sensors and modern electronics.
Oh, great answer. Thank you. We have another 2 questions, actually. Okay, first question is it a synth or a MIDI controller?
It's a MIDI controller. It does have a built-in square wave, like little synthesizer. The next version of it is going to have a more extensive synth, and then probably down the road a little bit, going to probably have an app or something that will allow you to really design your own sounds. Right now, I'm actually running it through an iPod that I bought off of eBay for $100, and I'm running it off of the Mini Moog Model D synth app. But it is a MIDI controller, but it was really important to me to have a built-in sound as well, so that if someone had no knowledge of synthesizers or MIDI, they could still play it. Just pick it up and play it.
Yeah. Yeah, I use it also. I use it cabled with the phone, or also Bluetooth with the phone. Also, I'm using a Model 15.
Cool.
Yeah. Next question is, do you use MIDI or OSC? So yeah, I guess let's answer MIDI. And how many people use it and play it today?
I've shipped out 135, 140, 135, I think. I've shipped, around there. And mostly in America, but I've got a few throughout the world as well. And I'm starting to see some videos from people. So, if you think about it, like if somebody started playing the violin, it's kind of a big ask to say, okay, within 6 months, I need you making quality YouTube videos. But some of these people have done that kind of thing where they've started to post some stuff up, which is cool.
Yeah, I've seen some. Can you change the sound?
Yeah, you can. You can change it to whatever. I like the sound, so it's kind of been the sort of the go-to glide sound for me. Let me see if I can just do one real quick, just to demonstrate. I really like doing like a handbell kind of sound, because it's, to me, like I said, people talk the theremin trumpet, but to me it's actually more like a melodic handbell, because you play it by, that sounds terrible. So I just scrolled through a couple and then just random picked one. Like that. There we go.
Right. Cool. Then I think we don't have anybody. Why does nobody wants to come on the stage? Don't be shy, guys. But that's it.
Sweet.
For questions. Thank you very much for your talk and for your demonstration. Really interesting.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
And if anybody has more questions, Keith is going to be around in the social lounge on one of the tables or on his table.
Yep. And I'll give you a link to my website at my table also. It's theglide.cc, theglide.cc, in case you want to learn more or buy one.
Right.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, the next session is going to start. Let me check. In 3 minutes ago. So then let's move to that one. I'm going to end this one and then start the new one.
All right.